Did you know before the World War II, a different war was already consuming Asia? Japan, an island nation hungry for power and resources. And they saw China as a weakened nation by division, yet rich with land, minerals, and people. It began as a small clash in 1931, would spiral into one of the bloodiest wars of the 20th century, and the most shocking truth is that it wasn't war but a massacre. This is the story of why Japan invaded China, how they did it, and the terrible cost that followed. To understand Japan's invasion, we must first understand its hunger. Japan was a small island nation with limited natural resources. Yet its industries demanded more coal, iron, oil. Its population was growing, its empire expanding meanwhile. China was vast, divided, and rich in everything Japan lacked. But after the fall of the Qing dynasty empire in 1911, China was fractured by warlords and civil conflict. To Tokyo's leaders, China looked like an opportunity, and a weakness waiting to be exploited. Behind the rising sun flag was an idea: the Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, but to achieve this dream Japan must strike first, which the leaders of Tokyo agreed on that. In order to start the invasion there must be serious casualties. In September 1931, Japan unleashed their plan, staged the Mukden incident, sabotaging their own railway and blaming it on China. Did it work? Yes, perfectly, although it was a lie, but it gave them the excuse they needed. Japanese troops poured into Manchuria, seizing city after city with little resistance. By 1932, they declared a new puppet state, Manchukuo. To make it look legitimate, they placed China's last emperor, Kui Ai, on the throne. But behind the silk curtains, it was the Japanese army pulling the strings. Some powerful nations condemned the invasion, but they walked out, and Japan's invasion plan was successful while the world said nothing. By 1937, Japan was ready for full-scale war. Their plan was swift and brutal: seize China's ports, railways, and cities, choking the nation into submission. They unleashed tanks, bombers, and artillery against Chinese troops often armed with little more than rifles. Civilians were not spared. Cities were shelled, towns burned, and terror became a weapon. Japan's army did not just invade China. It ought to crush its spirit through fear. On the night of July 7, 1937, near Beijing, the Marco Polo Bridge incident unfolded, a clash that ignited the Second Sino-Japanese War. The Lugoyu Bridge, dubbed Marco Polo by Westerners after the explorers' accounts, crossed the Yangding River southwest of Beijing, linking Japanese-controlled territories in Manchuria to Chinese-held North China. Around 10:30 p.m., Japanese troops from the China garrison, stationed in Tianjin under the 1901 Boxer Protocol, were conducting night maneuvers near the bridge. Suddenly, gunfire broke out. Accounts conflict on who fired. The Japanese claimed a soldier, Private Shimura Kikujiro, went missing during the exercise, suspecting Chinese troops from the 29th through Army, led by General Song Si-Huen, had fired or abducted him. The Chinese stationed in the fortified town of Wanping insisted they responded to unprovoked Japanese shots. By 11 p.m., Japan demanded entry to Wanping to search for their soldier. China refused, citing sovereignty. The skirmish escalated, with rifles, machine guns, and mortars blazing through the night. The Chinese held Wanping's defenses, while the better-equipped Japanese pressed their attack. By late July, they launched a full-scale invasion, capturing Beijing and Tianjin. The initial clash saw limited casualties, likely dozens dead on both sides, but it unleashed a devastating 8-year war, costing millions of lives. In 1937, Japan escalated its invasion of China during the Second Sino-Japanese War, targeting Shanghai and Nanjing. The Battle of Shanghai, August-November 1937, saw fierce Chinese resistance against Japan's superior forces. After 3 months of brutal urban warfare, Including heavy bombing, Japan captured Shanghai, with China losing approximately 200,000 troops and Japan approximately 40,000 and 60,000. The city's fall paved the way for Japan's advance to Nanjing. In December 1937, Japanese forces seized Nanjing, China's capital, unleashing the Nanjing Massacre December 1937 and January 1938. Over 6 weeks, soldiers committed mass executions, killing an estimated 40,000 and 300,000 civilians and disarmed soldiers. Widespread rape, looting, and arson devastated the city. The International Safety Zone, led by Westerners, offered limited refuge. The atrocities ended as Japan consolidated control, leaving Nanjing in ruins. Nanjing Massacre, one of the darkest chapters in human history. By 1938, Japan targeted Wuhan, a strategic hub in central China and the temporary seat of Chiang's government. The Battle of Wuhan was a sprawling, months-long campaign involving over 1 million Chinese troops and 350,000 Japanese soldiers. China adopted a strategy of attrition, leveraging its vast manpower and terrain to exhaust the better-equipped Japanese. Chiang's forces, advised by German military advisors like Alexander von Falkenhausen, used defensive lines along the Yangtze River and scorched earth policies to slow Japan's advance. In a desperate move, the Chinese breached the Yellow River dikes in June 1938 to flood the region, delaying Japanese troops but causing catastrophic flooding that killed hundreds of thousands of civilians and displaced millions. With major cities lost, China shifted to guerrilla warfare, especially in rural areas. The Communist State, through Army, led by Xu Di and Peng Dehuai, and the new Fourth Army conducted ambushes, sabotaged supply lines, and mobilized peasants in Japanese-occupied territories. The KMT and Communists, despite their ideological rift, maintained a fragile united front to resist Japan, though tensions simmered. On December 7, 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy launched a surprise attack on the US Naval Base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, a pivotal moment that shattered the morning calm and thrust the United States into World War II. At 7:55 am, waves of Japanese aircraft fighters, bombers, and torpedo planes swooped in from aircraft carriers positioned 230 miles north of Oahu. The assault was meticulously planned, catching the Pacific Fleet off guard. Within 2 hours, they inflicted devastating damage. 8 battleships were sunk or crippled, including the USS Arizona, which exploded in a fireball, killing 1,177 sailors. Nearly 200 aircraft were destroyed, most on the ground, and over 2,400 Americans lost their lives. With another 1,100 wounded, the Japanese aimed to neutralize the Pacific Fleet to prevent interference with their planned conquests across Southeast Asia and the Pacific. The attack was bold, but it miscalculated the American response. Instead of breaking US resolve, it unified a divided nation. On December 8th, President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed Congress, calling the attack a date which will live in infamy. Congress declared war on Japan almost unanimously, ending America's isolationist stance. For China, the impact was immediate and profound. Since 1937, China had been fighting a brutal, lonely war against Japan's invasion, suffering millions of casualties in battles like Shanghai and Nanjing. The US entry into the war meant China was no longer alone. American resources, supplies, and military support began flowing to China, bolstering their resistance. The attack also shifted global dynamics. Japan's aggression unified the Allies, now including the US, Britain, and the Soviet Union, against the Axis powers. While Pearl Harbor was a tactical victory for Japan, it awakened a sleeping giant, setting the stage for a grueling war that would ultimately lead to Japan's defeat. By mid-1945, Japan was on the brink of defeat in World War II. Allied forces had crippled its navy and air forces, and firebombing campaigns had devastated cities like Tokyo. However, Japan's military leadership resisted surrender, prompting the United States to deploy a new weapon, the atomic bomb, developed through the Manhattan Project. On August 6, 1945, the SB-29 bomber Enola Gay dropped Little Boy, a uranium-based atomic bomb, on Hiroshima, a key military and industrial city. The bomb detonated at 8:15 am, releasing energy equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT. A blinding flash and massive explosion obliterated the city center. Buildings were incinerated, and an estimated 70,000 people, about 30% of Hiroshima's population, died instantly. Tens of thousands more suffered severe burns, radiation poisoning, and injuries. By year's end, the death toll rose to approximately 140,000 and due to radiation effects and injuries, underestimating the US's capacity to deploy another bomb. On August 9, 1945, the second B-29 Boxcar dropped Fat Man, a plutonium-based bomb, on Nagasaki, a port city with shipbuilding and industrial significance. The bomb, equivalent to 21,000 tons of TNT, exploded at 11:02 am. Nagasaki's hilly terrain limited some damage, but the blast still killed around 40,000 people instantly, with the death toll climbing to about 74,000, and by late 1945, survivors, known as Hibakusha, faced long-term health issues from radiation, including cancers and birth defects. The bombing shocked Japan's government. On August 8, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan and invaded Manchuria, further pressuring Japan. On August 15, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender in a radio broadcast, citing the new and most cruel bomb as a key reason. The formal surrender was signed on September 2, 1945, aboard the USS Missouri, ending World War II for China. Victory had come, but at an unimaginable cost. Over 20 million Chinese were dead. Cities lay in ruins, families shattered,